first time here at Davos, and maybe ever. I'm just going to go ahead and say ever. So I'm so excited. Please welcome to the stage Jennifer Morris of the Nature Conservancy and Larry Selzer of the Conservation Fund. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to not only get to Davos, but to get to Axios House. I want to come back to that deal in a minute because it sounds interesting. But first, in one word, opening lightning round, if you had to use one word to describe your Davos experience so far, what would it be? Go.
Walking.
Insanity.
Well, walking's good. You're not in the traffic. It's better for the planet, and it's my only form of exercise this week. I don't know about you. And insanity, yes. Have you guys been to Davos before?
No, it's my first time.
Ooh, first time.
I think 5th.
Nice. Well, do you have any tips for us newbies? Because this is also my first time.
Really good shoes. Don't do exactly what you're doing. Don't do the change.
Do what I'm
into
doing.
Heels.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the look. Pace yourself, because I can tell you it can be a lot, especially if you're just napping every night like I am. I'm sure many of you are.
Raise your hand if you're tired. Yeah, all of us. But we're going to stay awake and have an amazing conversation. So you're both nonprofits, and you work in the conservation space, and your job is to conserve, but you need money to do that. So can you talk about how you work with companies and others to make money to conserve things? I know it sounds simple, but it's really hard in a world that is run on capitalism, which is kind of everything that Davos is about. Larry, why don't we start with you?
Amy, the Conservation Fund is like the investment bank for conservation in America. We use our own balance sheet and other people's money to acquire the most important places in the country. And over the last 40 years, that totals over 10 million acres valued around $12 billion. But our mission is not just to acquire those lands, it's also to demonstrate that those lands can be used for sustainable development. And so let me give you an example that will highlight this. Over the last 30 years, the United States has lost more than 20 million acres of forests. The Conservation Fund is keenly focused on protecting what remains, and toward that end, we've deployed over $1 billion to acquire over 1 million acres of working forests. And by working forests, I mean forests that are still being harvested. Even as a nonprofit, we're now one of the largest timberland owners in the country. And those forests are still on the tax rolls. They're all being harvested. They're sending wood to the mills. They employ over 8,000 people. They store about 250 million metric tons of carbon, and they generate over $850 million in economic impact each and every year. The investors in our work include some of the highlighted companies that are here: IKEA, Cox Enterprises, most recently Apple, because they see the power of private capital to drive conservation forward. And frankly, that is the future of conservation, is this integration of two of the most powerful forces on the country, in the world, the environmental movement and the free enterprise system. And so when I think about conservation, particularly this year, I get asked often, how's it going? And what do you see this year being like? And I will tell you, based on results like we're seeing, and I know the Nature Conservancy is the same, conservation is alive and well, it's thriving. But it's this integration of business and the environment.
So the conventional wisdom that the climate agenda has collapsed, which might have been a story I wrote recently, you think that's not true?
I'm going to differentiate the climate agenda from the conservation agenda. So climate, to most people, is something distant and abstract. And all the effort to address climate change, they don't feel that in an approximate way in the here and now. And so we're starting to see more of that with drought, with flooding, with energy costs spiking. All of those things will start to turn the tide. But conservation solves real-world problems in the here and now. And people need to think of conservation as solving proximate problems: clean air, clean water, jobs in the rural communities, recreational opportunities, climate change, biodiversity, all of those things. And if we can focus on conservation as a solution, then I think the future is very bright.
Jennifer, I want to turn to you. I want to hear a little bit more about this deal in South America. It sounds fascinating, and how it's an example of putting conservation to work for both humans and nature. And then secondly, would love to hear your perspective. You know, the Nature Conservancy obviously your core focus is conservation, but you also are increasingly involved in climate change. And I should say that I'm somewhat informed about TNC because I'm a volunteer on the Washington State chapter of the Nature Conservancy. So I have appreciated being informed from that perspective. So how do you balance the important job of conservation, such as this river in South America, with the longer term problem of climate change?
Yeah, so great to be here. Thank you so much, and thank you for supporting us so much, Amy. So we are the world's largest environmental organization. We are about $1.4 billion a year, 6,000 staff, 83 countries. We don't just buy land, but we think it's a really critical aspect of our toolkit, and we've been around for 75 years this year. We have a big anniversary. And just a minute on the Puchiguin deal in Cochamo. I was there last week. It is one of the most incredible places on planet Earth. It is called the Yosemite of Patagonia. You all know Patagonia is incredible already. Well, imagine huge granite rock face. I was there with a bunch of climbers, and they just couldn't believe their eyes. They'd never been there before. They said, this is Yosemite without the people. It's absolutely stunning. So please do go there. And that the concept there was quite simple, as you heard before, is this was a philanthropic deal. It was about $80 million that we're able to rally a bunch of donors around because, again, when you see it, it was funny that when I was there, I said, so what was your success rate with donors when you brought them to this place? And they said, 100%. It is that magical. I mean, you cannot take your eyes away. So, that was a deal where everyone recognized the power of place and the importance of saving, this incredible, incredible place for the people there, working with the ranching community there, the gauchos in that valley to actually save this place forever. The real specific, I just want to pick up on a thread that was just mentioned. Right now in the United States, there's obviously, climate change is not something that we talk about a lot anymore in most circles, but nature does have a pass. I would say that there's a whole effort around nature is nonpartisan, and that really resonates. We do a lot of polling in the U.S. around this topic, and we find that in deeply red states, that conservative voters, over 80% of them still believe that we should be investing in nature conserved and nature restored. Why? Because those are great places to recreate. They're great places to fish. They're incredible places to do hunting. So those places need to be preserved, and we are very nonpartisan. We know nature is here forever, and if we lose it, it is now, and we've got to be involved no matter who's in power, and we really take a lot of pride on that, and we're able to be, I think, the biggest partially because of that commitment. So you asked me about how do we make money from nature, and how do we ensure that the private sector comes in. Well, this has, of course, been the holy grail of our sector for a long time, and the work the Conservation Fund is doing is absolutely amazing. So we are looking at a situation where there's just not enough philanthropy. I mean, this deal that I just mentioned, that is very unique because of that place is so special. But it's hard to get the level of philanthropy that you need to do really, really big things in conservation.
And has that gone down in recent years?
I'd say, no, actually, interestingly, there's been a bit of a, I think as we explain nature and conservation in a way that makes sense and resonates to different audiences, no, we are not seeing that at all. In fact, as public money shrinks, I think private philanthropists realize they need to step into the breach. And that's been so, so, so important for our work. But I also would say that, the private sector is stepping up as well. And the reason, I think, partially is that they see the value of conserving nature, not as a CSR thing, as corporate social responsibility, but as integral to their supply chains. I work with some of the biggest companies on the planet, and they're seeing changes in soil health. They're seeing changes in productivity. Why? Partially because we're destroying those soils with inputs that are unsustainable for the health of that soil. So we're seeing companies actually realize they have to preserve nature, and they need to invest in nature in a way that will sustain their supply chain. So it's not just philanthropy, it's about investing in the infrastructure of your businesses.
Do you see a conflict between addressing climate change, such as building new renewable energy, sometimes preserving hydroelectricity dams, compared to conserving land and rivers? How do you balance that?
So this is a great, great question, because often we talk about hydro is a very renewable resource, and it can be. But you can also put hydro in places that it shouldn't be. That is very, very bad for fish, it's bad for communities, et cetera. So we have a whole initiative around siting hydro right, and that initiative is here, and we're doing some great work in Europe, as well as in the US and India and other places. How do we ensure that we can do hydro energy in places that don't undermine nature? It's a big effort. We're also doing a lot of dam removal. We just agreed, we bought 4 dams in Maine that we're going to take down. And that's because they are no longer serving the state of Maine and the Northeast for energy in the way it did before because of changes in river flow patterns, as well as the angling community has really stepped up and said, we want to be able to restore these areas to their original fish stocks, and the cultural aspects of the local people there, the indigenous people, are so excited about deindustrializing this part of Maine. And I think that's super exciting work.
Larry, I want to go to you first for this question and then come back to Jennifer. You know, AI has been the topic du jour for a couple of years now here in Davos. And we all know about the energy boom that it's prompting. I want to put that aside and hear from both of you, what are some ideas either in place already or that you're talking about with your staff and your supporters? How can AI help conserve nature?
Well, I'm going to answer the question from a different perspective. And that has to do with the amount of infrastructure that needs to be built to power AI. So the last great infrastructure project that was completed in the United States was finished in 1956. It's called the Interstate Highway System, and Eisenhower was president. And that totals only 46,000 miles. But if you think about the new and improved transmission capacity that's required to power AI, for conservation or any other purpose, you're talking about hundreds of thousands, maybe even 1 million miles of new transmission capacity. And one of the things we don't do well in this country is deal with trade-offs. And so if you go to most advocacy groups today and you say, are you all in for addressing climate change? They say, absolutely, I'm there, right there with you. And then they litigate every single project that actually would do something to address climate change. And there's no intellectual honesty in that. We have to come to terms with the fact that the energy transition requires a massive amount of infrastructure. That has a significant impact on land and water and species, and we have to figure out how to address that. 15 years ago, the Conservation Fund built a business around mitigating for large infrastructure projects. And frankly, it was a dicey thing to do because we were accused of getting in bed with the developers or supporting industry. But the reality is that infrastructure is essential. We need that transmission capacity. AI is going to solve a lot of problems, things I can't even think of. But we have to figure out how we capture some of the value of that new infrastructure and, like jujitsu, throw it over into the conservation space. And over the last 10 years, we've deployed almost $500 million that's come as mitigation from infrastructure projects, all of it to conserve land and support communities. And so I look at the AI as another driver for creating a new form of conservation capital. And I think that's a very exciting thing. But we have to come to terms with this trade-off between what we need and what we wish we could have.
I completely agree. Trade-offs need to be addressed in such a more genuine way. Jennifer, what comes to your mind when I say AI and fish?
We need it. We are deploying it at scale. Let me give you an example. So
wait, just to be clear, AI is going to save all the fish.
You know, it's going to help. I think it's going to help. Let me give you an example. So, and first of all, thank you for this discussion because I'm sort of everyone here. I mean, it's been 5 minutes in this talk before we've mentioned AI, right? So everyone's talking about AI, but they're not talking about AI as a conservation solution. And I think that is a really important thing that TNC and many organizations are working on. Let me give you an example in fish. So in the tuna sector, how many people eat tuna? Okay, tuna has a lot of issues. I'm just going to throw it out there. And we're trying to solve those issues. So one of the challenges with tuna and tuna boats and other fish is there's not enough eyes on the boats. So we've deployed something called electronic monitoring where you have cameras on the boats that are actually taking pictures of not only labor practices, but also all the bycatch that's coming onto the boats. Now, when you buy something that's certified sustainable, what's really happening is the fish that you're eating, the data that's being processed for that fish is in a hard drive somewhere being processed. You don't actually know whether it's truly sustainable. That's the honest truth. So what we're deploying now is edge AI technology on tuna boats. So you can take all that data from the electronic monitoring pictures of all the different bycatch and on the boat, change your management practices. and it's being monitored with third party through MSC and others, Marine Stewardship Council, to actually understand what's happening and how we can do the long-term changing. So that is changing how we are doing fish, and we're using AI to do that. It is actually a game changer. We've now developed a whole initiative called the Tuna Transparency Pledge. We have about 20% of the entire tuna sector who have signed on to this, 100% electronic monitoring with edge AI technology by the end of 2027. So that is a movement in the right direction, but we've got to do more. We've got to deploy these technologies. So all of you that are in AI in the room or listening, please make sure you're developing AI solutions for nature, because we need to move faster and move as fast as other sectors are moving with AI.
We are out of time, but I am going to sneak in my concluding lightning round game. But you have to be truly one-word answers, because we are running out of time. So would you rather explore the deep ocean or outer space?
Deep ocean.
Deep ocean.
I thought maybe one of you would have nature might be in space someday at the rate we're going. Would you rather bring back the woolly mammoth or the dodo bird?
Dodo bird.
Yeah, I'm a bird guy. I have to go with Jennifer on that one.
I'll have to take that up with Ben in our sequel conversation, which he is trying to do the dodo bird as well.
I'm not sure it's a keystone species.
No, it's just a cute one, a cute species. It's not, but the vulture, I mean, come on, the vulture is a keystone species. Let's give the ugly bird some love. Last, would you rather change the past or see the future?
I'd rather change the past. Frankly, the mistakes we've made, we shouldn't have made. And the exciting thing about both of our jobs is we get to create the future. And sometimes you don't need to see the future to have the most fun getting there.
I love it.
Change the future. We can do it.
Change the future. You only get to see the future, Jennifer.
I want to change the future.
Well, with that, I want to say thank you both.
Thank you.